Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And thank you for joining us for this webinar. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Hannah Zarur, who is going to be running us through this quick lunch and learn for us to know what is Agile HR and how it helps us. So Hannah, I've known Hannah for now coming up to 2 years.
Yeah.
She holds a information system and HR combined degree and has over 18 years experience wearing various hats, helping organizations with their business agility and HR, running multi-million dollar programs, and overall, many experiences that we will benefit from. That's just a quick intro, but Hannah can tell you more about herself in a little while. Hannah, thank you for accepting to be on this webinar. I'm going to hand over to you and let you run through the session.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really passionate about Agile HR because, it was something that I started learning about doing HR information systems, and then it's kind of morphed into this thing where I realized we weren't really agile if we didn't include HR and just generally whole organization into business agility. So that's why Agile HR is a special passion of mine, and I'm really, really excited to do this today. So thanks for having me. So
Absolute
this,
pleasure.
yeah, thank you. So this is going to be running probably around 40 to 50 minutes. Essentially, what we're looking at is a short introduction to Agile HR. We're going to really sort of understand what Agile HR is, as well as go into the Agile HR Explorer course curriculum a little bit towards the end, which will help you understand what the Agile HR curriculum is for that one-day Explorer course. But my purpose in doing this webinar is that you will get tremendous value, I hope, just from the webinar itself. And if you would like to join us for more insight as well in the future, you're more than welcome to. So the agenda here is the welcome, and then we're going into the HR overview of what it means to be Agile HR, as well as mindset principles, practices, as well as the curriculum on the Agile HR course. And we will be talking about all of this from the perspective of HR itself, not from the perspective of just pure agility as is spoken about. So everything will be specifically for HR folks, managers, and others who are interested in Agile HR. So what is Agile HR? It's an approach to human resources that really applies the Agile principles and practices. And the core aspects of that are it's people-centric. So in Agile, we say everything has to be customer-centric. In Agile HR, the customer are the people in the organization. And we also focus on being responsive as well as adaptive. We focus on being iterative, having cross-functional collaboration that's the opposite of silos, and giving value to both the employees as well as the organization through the employees. We also seek to enhance visibility, flexibility, employee engagement, and of course, continuous learning, which are already aspects of HR that are very important, but Agile just takes it to a whole other level. So why Agile HR? The nature of work is constantly changing, and HR currently is pretty stuck in a lot of ways in the old ways of doing work, and it is not as responsive as other business functions. And I know that myself, having been in HR, as well as other people who are in HR, they find that the business does not necessarily respect the value that HR brings. And part of that is that there are no proper metrics, there are no proper ways that that HR is keeping up with the agile revolution, with the digital revolution. And in order to do all of that, it's really, really important that HR adapts quickly and continues to evolve to a new world of work. And in order to do that, you need that creativity, that adaptability, innovation, and continuous learning. And Agile is sort of a way to get that, move that forward. And it's not simply an IT sort of thing, it's actually for HR, for marketing, and for the entire organization as well. So, what are the keys to Agile HR? So, we talked about this a little bit already, iterative development. So, when people think of development, they think of IT and software. But development can also mean the development of actual solutions or products, etc. So products can be something that is a software system for the employees. It could be a performance review system. It could be many, many different things, from compensation to learning and development, and all the different aspects. And we'll go into that a little bit later as well. It's also very, very important to have cross-functional teams. And one of the issues that HR has in a lot of companies, maybe not all, is it's very siloed. We have this HR function and it sits over here. And then we have all of these different things happening on this side with all of these little other departments. And there isn't cross collaboration, cross functionality, etc. And then there are silos within the HR function as well. So it's really important to bring this cross functional team and collaboration for Agile, as well as the customer's focus we talked about, where the customer is the employee. So let's talk here about the Agile Manifesto principles. Now, one of the misunderstandings generally about Agile is that it is a methodology. And Agile is not in itself. You can have Agile methodologies, but Agile itself is based on some values and principles. And we look here at the four main principles, the values of Agile, of the Agile Manifesto, which was formed in 2001. It was written by a group of developers who wanted a different methodology from the old way, which was the waterfall methodology, it's so called, where everything was planned up front and then it took forever to develop, design, and everything and have the work delivered at the end. And often what was delivered, sometimes years down the line, did not actually meet the requirements of the customer or what the product was intended for. So, and that is actually something that we see in HR. How many times have we focused on developing something or developing a solution or any sort of system that we're looking at, and then it takes forever for it to actually be delivered. And by the time it's delivered, it may not actually fit. There might have been, for instance, COVID might have come up, or some other disruption in the market might have come up, and it might not be valid anymore. And so it's really, really important to look at these values and sort of understand that we focus on the individuals and interactions. We focus on the working solutions and not just talking about, not just writing and documenting it. We also focus on customer collaboration and responding to change over a plan. So these are the Agile Manifesto principles applied to Agile HR. So I have reworded these quite a bit, but if you look at the Agile Manifesto on the internet, you will see that they are the same thing, but just reworded for HR. So I invite you to look at the original, look at these Agile Manifesto principles on this slide, and sort of compare and contrast. And as you see here, we have some really important points, like you're focusing on delivering value to an internal customers in Agile HR, embracing changes in organizational needs, implementing HR initiatives, daily collaboration between employees and managers and HR, a supportive environment for employees, as well as open and direct communication with HR teams and across the organization, measuring HR progress by tangible improvements, developing sustainable HR practices, and striving for excellence in HR processes and systems, simplifying HR processes and eliminating bureaucracy, and empowering HR teams and employees, as well as reflecting on HR practices and team performance. So that's just a brief overview, but I encourage you to kind of read through these and consider where you are currently, how you're currently applying some of these already. Because I think for anyone who has been in HR for a while, or even if you're new to HR, you naturally gravitate towards understanding that these principles are important in the work that you do. The frustration, I think, for a lot of HR people is how do you actually implement this? How does this actually happen? You can look at all of these and think they're nice to haves, but it's really important to have cohesion within the team and a plan to actually implement these principles in reality, in actual processes and actual ways of being, and in an actual mindset. And I encourage you to think not a when you look at the agile principles and values that we shared, I encourage you not to think of agile as a methodology, but as an organizational development framework. And we all know that organizational development is a very core function of HR as well. So in our course, the Agile HR Explorer, we will be going through these shift in values. So while we had this longer list of values and principles earlier, we have kind of condensed it down to what the shift in values actually is in terms of an HR perspective. So we're looking at the left column is what we're moving away from, and the right column is what we're moving towards. And it's very important to consider certain things here, like control and command micromanagement is moving to empowerment and leadership. And leadership is meaning self-leadership as well. We're looking at proactive and forward thinking. We're looking at individuals and interactions and collaborative teams, high customer value. Whereas we see that a lot of HR still, despite the digital revolution, we're still stuck in this left side, at least for some of our work, where we're just trying to, for instance, prescriptive and one size fits all. We try to create performance reviews once a year that that are supposed to fit everyone and work for every single role. That's one example of some of the things we'll be moving away from. And we'll go into more detail in the one-day Agile HR Explorer as well on how exactly to move from these on the left to these on the right. So just to briefly touch on Agile HR practices, we're looking at 4 key areas when we go into the Agile HR Explorer. So we'll be going into these in more detail, but it's important to sort of understand them from this perspective as well. We're looking at talent acquisition. So here we're focusing on potential rather than experience, because in a fast-paced world where we're looking at a digital revolution, we're looking at markets that are constantly changing, it's really, really important to have people who can be flexible and adaptable rather than just focusing on employees. So one of the things that you learn about is we focus on learning employees rather than knowledge workers. So instead of knowledge workers, we look at learning workers, people who are constantly learning and are willing to move and adapt to the changing ways, rather than people who are stuck in one way, because we're in markets and in the world right now where we need constant learning. So it's important to hire for potential, and we'll go more into that as well in the one-day workshop. Another aspect is learning and development. We're looking at micro learning here, growth coaching, hands-on experimentation, and we'll go through some case studies a little bit as well in this today, as well as in much more detail in the one-day course, where we look at experimentation, hands-on experimentation, how we can encourage employees to learn through creating a strong learning environment. Another aspect is rewards and recognition. We're developing transparent reward systems, equitable pay structures, livable wages, etc. And we'll again go through a small case study on that as well. And where it's not simply there's a lack of psychological safety for people sometimes, because often people who've been there for 10 years are getting paid less than people who've just come in as new employees. So we talk about this transparency as well. and how to create meaningful reward systems. And we'll go more into that in the 1-day course as well, because we just don't have time for today. And we look at performance management. I alluded to this earlier. How important is it not to have these once a year performance reviews, but instead to have a performance acceleration model where we're continuously getting feedback? We're not just judging the employee, but we're getting feedback from them as well. That it's something where the employee looks forward to their performance reviews, so to speak, but not in the traditional method. And we'll be going through that as well as in more detail in the 1-day course. But we look at proactive resolution of issues, structured frameworks like the program increment planning, and retrospectives to drive continuous improvement and success. So it doesn't become this dreaded thing at the end of every year or whenever or quarter, however it's done in your company, where employees are scared and then they maybe get these unfair incentives that reward maybe the bullies or the people who aren't really necessarily the best at the work they do. And we'll talk more about that as well. Another key aspect that's important to understand is we differentiate Agile for HR versus HR for Agile. So Agile for HR is where we view HR as a profession or a department. So we're looking at bringing Agile practices to the HR department. So here we can look at things like Scrum, Kanban, continuous improvement, etc. We bring all of those things, the ways of Agile into the HR profession itself. And for HR for Agile, we see HR as a discipline. So the different aspects of HR, such as learning and development or performance, etc., we're bringing HR Agile values and principles into those HR practices. So for instance, we talk about the performance in the previous slide, and here we're bringing the values of Agile into performance and how we see looking at Agile values in bringing performance more often, bringing performance reviews or different ways of getting performance, understanding of performance and continuous feedback in an Agile way into the HR practices themselves. And this is just one slide. There's obviously a lot more we can deep dive into understanding these two aspects of Agile for HR and HR for Agile, and they're both equally important. So it's definitely something that will happen, will be gone through more in detail in the 1-day course as well. But even without that, you're still able to apply this understanding and this knowledge of understanding how to kind of bridge the gap between the two and not just look at it from one perspective only. So we'll look at Agile HR tools, and there are so many that I didn't want to make a long list on one slide, but I wanted to kind of give you a taster of some Agile HR tools. So you can use Kanban boards. As you know, Kanban boards were developed by Toyota essentially back in, I think it was the 1940s. So it was or 1950s, maybe. It was a long time ago. And it really helped Toyota become the superpower that it is with its quality control, et cetera. Was part of it was because of the Kanban system. And so that's something that's been used in Agile software development a lot. And we will be going through how to use that as well in Agile HR. And how important it is to be able to visualize the work as well is a key aspect of Agile work HR by visualizing the work on a board. You can also have Scrum meetings where you have daily stand-ups and progress tracking. And you can have retrospectives. Retrospectives are actually a key way to get continuous feedback from within your team, from employees, et cetera, on how things are working for them. HR analytics. So one of the things that is that can be lacking in HR departments is data-driven decision making. And as I talked about earlier, there's often a struggle with HR to be recognized for the value it brings to the business. And this has been a constant struggle for as long as I've been in HR for over 2 decades, at least that I know of. And I'm sure it's been going on even longer. And I think it's even though it's improving a little bit, I don't see it improving sufficiently to what I see the value of HR is. And I think part of that is we don't have proper metrics. We don't have proper data-driven insights to inform HR decisions and strategies. And we don't have proper metrics to understand how the HR function impacts the business as well. And that's part of Agile HR is to have proper metrics, to have measurements of how to work things into into the business value in a concrete way. We also look at feedback loops as an Agile HR tool. Continuous feedback mechanisms for employees. It could be surveys, it could be many different things. And we'll go through a small case study as well on that shortly. So this is just a small snapshot of any of the HR tools you can use. And we'll be going through more ways to kind of implement Agile for HR and HR for Agile in the one-day course. So this one is just a sample of Agile HR roles. It can really be different across different sort of teams. So we're looking at one potential way is to have an Agile coach kind of working within this team that is cross-functional, where we have talent acquisition, the business partner, the learning and development lead, the total rewards manager, and the systems manager all in one. And there can be so many different variations of how we look at bringing together these these teams that would support an agile HR revolution. So we're looking at it in from the perspective right now of a cross-functional team, but we can also look at it from the perspective of a Scrum team, where we have a Scrum Master within that team. We also have a product owner within that team. So there are so many different ways to structure this, and that's something we can discuss as well in the one-day course. So speaking on the many case studies, these will be gone through in much more detail in the coming course, but we'll look at the Ship It days, the hackathons at Atlassian, where employees innovate on any project for 24 hours every quarter. This helps teams to self-innovate, to self-organize, and create rapid problem solving. And it's one simple way to implement the principles of the Agile Manifesto is to allow that self-innovation, that self-leadership, and to self-organize and to work together to achieve something that is different from what they normally do, where they're allowed that creativity, they're allowed to sort of have a different mindset and be innovative in a way that their regular day-to-day life might not allow them to. And then we also look at the transparent salary formula at Buffer, where we look at the public salary formula, how everything is very open and all roles are paid the same based on the work that is done, rather than hidden salaries or negotiations, etc., because sometimes the best employees might not be the ones who are the best at negotiating. So it promotes transparency, it promotes openness, which again aligns with Agile HR values. And then also another one is the daily traffic light survey. And this goes into the continuous feedback, where employee happiness is complemented by detailed monthly surveys on work-life balance and growth. And we're actually able to give their feedback on what is working well and what isn't working well for them. And we'll have some healthy discussions around this in the one-day course and be able to understand their strategy in more detail of exactly how they have implemented this. So what are the benefits of Agile HR? We have increased responsiveness. So Agile HR enables faster adaptation to changing business needs and employee expectations. It enhances collaboration, continuous improvement, as well as employee engagement and innovation. And we all know in the current way that a lot of the HR function works is we don't have the ability to really proactively work on things. A lot of things are reactionary because of the way things are handed to the HR department and the way the HR department is structured. So it's very, very critical to be able to adapt and respond quickly instead of getting stuck in a process or in bureaucracy, to be able to have that continuous improvement, that employee engagement and collaboration in order to continually improve and innovate as you go forward and actually have proper metrics to show to the management. So these are taken from the State of Agile report, these numbers here. So these were picked out specifically for the impact on Agile HR. This is what Agile does for organizational performance based on some studies. And these are the 4 metrics we specifically said for Agile HR, which are more specific to that, which is ability to manage changing priorities. It actually increases that by 87%. Increased team productivity, 85%, improved project visibility, 84%, and improved team morale and motivation, 81%. So one of the cool things that we can explore as well in the Agile Explorer course is looking at real life metrics and employee net promoter score scores that we get from employees regarding the implementation of Agile in their organizations and how it impacts not just the employees, but also the business. So let's look at the 1-day course. So we have the changing nature of work will be discussed in more detail as well. We'll go more in depth into Agile values and principles. We kind of went over them pretty quickly because it would take a long time to dissect every single principle. But I encourage you to go back and look at that slide where we talked about the different principles and consider how that might be something that you can improve. One of those principles you can start to apply in your current workplace, or which principles you currently use in your workplace and how that has positively impacted your workplace as well. Or if it hasn't positively impacted your workplace, then what are some changes you can make in order to adjust that implementation to your workplace and the particular needs you have? Because Agile is based on these values and principles, but in the end, it's not a one size fits all. It is very, very important that it is considered something that you hold these values and principles, you consider it an organizational development framework to work within, and then you take that and you apply it in a way that works for your particular company. And every company is different, and that's why this requires discernment and intelligent application to your particular workplace, department, or wherever you're looking to apply Agile HR. We'll also go into Agile for HR and HR for Agile in much more detail. We just kind of brushed over that because of time today, but it'll be important to kind of understand what are some specific ways to implement on Agile in both of those aspects of Agile HR, Agile for HR, and HR for Agile. We'll also look at the themes, which we talked about, the talent acquisition, learning and development, reward and recognition, and performance management in much more depth, and how to implement Agile in those areas specifically with real world examples. We'll also look at some practical insights, and we'll talk about the Douglas effect, where currently in HR, a lot of the work that we do is designed for the worst employees, and how Agile HR will get us to focus on engaging the best rather than avoiding the worst. And that'll be a pretty interesting discussion. I think I'd love to hear your views on where you've had a Douglas in your workplace and how you've dealt with that, and how Agile HR principles can actually support you in changing your focus on solving problem employee issues and instead on refocusing on engaging the best. So I think that'll be a very interesting part of the course as well. We'll dive more into the Agile basics. So we talked about the waterfall methodology a little bit, and we'll talk about what the waterfall methodology is and how it has applied to HR. And then we'll go into the adaptive ways of implementing the same things from Agile HR. I mean, from HR to Agile HR. We'll talk about iterative delivery, ways of doing that, and where we're not just looking at a full implementation, but iterations, some practical tools and methodologies to make that happen as well. As well as adaptability, strategic tools like Kanban systems, enhancing collaboration, and agility in HR practices. So, Agile HR will continue to evolve as organizations adopt agile ways of working more broadly. So we'll see that we'll just uh, in adopting the agile processes themselves, there will actually be support, but it's also important to adopt the mindset and to support agile teams as well as reducing the silos between departments and between teams. So we'll look at flexible people processes and using data and feedback loops for continuous improvement as well, and focusing on employee empowerment. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time in this. So let me know if anyone has any questions. And I'm happy to answer anything if you want to just type it in the chat.
Thanks,
And
Hannah. I will
yep,
let you know as soon as we get questions coming in. Thanks for that overview. It was good to see what are the benefits that we can expect by attending that class.
thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Bear with me
Thanks for
one
having me.
second.
Sure.
I will see we got a question here. When you talk about the cross-functional team, can you give us a little bit more on that, on what you mean?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So, this is an example of a cross-functional team, for instance, where we have all the different aspects of the HR roles actually functioning together as one cohesive unit. So a lot of the time, we in departments we have the HR business partner, we have talent acquisition systems, and they're all working in silos. But it would be ideal to have teams where we have all of these functions within one team so that we're able to actually bring the whole team together and have the input from all the different areas when we are making the decisions that we're making. Because as you know, every aspect affects every area in HR affects every different area as well. And it's also beneficial to have HR within other teams when we're looking at organizational agility as a whole, to have HR folks embedded in different teams as well. So we're not just working in silos where HR is sitting separately, but we're actually bringing together the HR function into in the mix with IT, marketing, etc., depending on the needs of the organization. So it'll look different for every single organization and every team, but I encourage you to, again, there's no correct way of doing agile. The idea is to follow the values and principles, and the idea is what works for you to be a cross-functional team for your department, for your team right now, what works for you. And agile is also iterative. So even are, if you do it one way and you find it doesn't work, that's perfect. That is agile, right? You're able to then implement another way as the team grows, as your agile implementation continues, because agile implementation is done in an agile way. It's not done in this long waterfall way where we get everything up front done and then we suddenly implement. That's not how agile works. It'll be a phase by phase implementation. And when you're looking at that, you're going to be able to course correct based on what works. And that's the beauty of Agile is you're not stuck in ways, you're adaptable and you're working towards what works best for your team. Hopefully that answered the question. Let me know if it did.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last question. When are you running the course and where can we find more information?
Sure. Yeah. So the course will be run September 26th. And I believe it is from 8 a.m. Pacific time till 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Pacific time. I will include the link information as well, so everyone can access the exact timings and the exact registration details. And we will be running specials as well on the course. So make sure you register as early as possible to get those the discounted rate on the course as well.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Oh,
And
and by the way, one quick thing I forgot to say, you will get an Agile HR certificate as well, which is great. It'll look amazing on your LinkedIn and it'll distinguish you from all the other HR folks and hopefully, align you with business agility and agile implementations that are happening across organizations, not just in IT, but across the entire organization. So hopefully it is not just enlightening for you on a professional level, but it also enables you to be more competitive and support your team and organization better as well. Thanks.
sounds really good. I am really looking forward in learning more from you and see how the agile or how the HR function can enable and accelerate agility within organizations. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye for now.